Hey everyone, this is Poohead189, and today I'm going to take it upon myself to explain, to the best of my abilities, the magic that we see in the series of Dragon Ball. This video goes out to those who asked me Dragon Ball questions in my second Q&A video, and asked them in the correct place, and this also goes out to my boy Lumbago, who asked for this specifically. I missed his question in the first Q&A vid, and this is to make up for it. I hope you all enjoy. So, Dragon Ball essentially started off as wuxia, or at least based on the wuxia genre of fiction. And what that is a Chinese genre that follows martial artists adventuring in a fantastical setting, usually ancient China. Now, Wu roughly translates to martial, like martial art, which is why Wushu is Chinese martial arts, sort of like it's another term for kung fu. And Zhe, as in wuxia, is translated to chivalrous, hero, and sometimes even vigilante, or someone who acts as a hero but not being a servant of the law. So wuxia is a martial arts hero, one could say. And so Dragon Ball fits very neatly into the wuxia genre, even if it is made in Japan and by a Japanese mangaka, since wuxia is generally a Chinese genre. And in wuxia, a common element is that it is set in historical fantasy, or a fantastical setting, as I said, and both the usage of ki and, you guessed it, magic is very prevalent. Now, obviously, the first element of magic that we see in Dragon Ball, even if it is not performative magic, are the magical Dragon Balls themselves. And it is quickly followed by the flying Nimbus, transforming pigs, transforming floating cats, talking turtles, anthropomorphic rabbits that can turn you into a carrot at a touch, you name it. And while some of what I just mentioned is not technically magic in the sense in the Dragon Ball world, since I don't think Toriyama would consider Oolong and Puar transforming as magic, it aligns well with the overtly fantastical elements. But before we dive into the different magical abilities, let's discuss how magic works. At least, how it works from what we can glean. Now, something we need to realize right off the bat is that in Dragon Ball, power trumps all. If you have a sufficient amount of power, you can either be resistant or completely nullify magic from a being sufficiently weaker than you. It's the same with psychic powers, or pretty much anything, really. I'll give you two examples. In the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament, Chaozu uses his psychic powers on Krillin to keep him immobile and cause him pain. In the Saiyan Saga, he seems to be attempting to do the exact same thing to Nappa, yet it has no effect. That is because Nappa is merely that much more powerful than Chaozu. And while Dragon Ball Super does break a lot of Dragon Ball rules, another good example is when Hit uses his Time Freeze ability on Jiren in the World Tournament, or the Universal Tournament, Yet Jiren was able to power through it, albeit slowly. You see, it's not because Jiren was more powerful than time itself, he was just simply more powerful than Hit, and that also includes Hit's control over time. Now, certain beings like Supreme Kai or Babidi have exceptionally powerful psychic powers or magic powers and can extend their powers a bit farther than some relative to their strength, but they still follow the same principle. Though I suppose this also means that the opposite is true, and if you're not much stronger than someone, then you are also susceptible to their magic. Another good example is when Buhan used his Candy Beam on Vegito. It did manage to transmute his form, but Buhan did not have sufficient strength compared to Vegito for it to take full effect, so Vegito still was able to fly and talk. In fact, while we can't say this for a certainty, it's highly likely that if we put Frieza in early Dragon Ball, Boss Rabbit's Touch or Devilman's Devilmite Beam might have no effect on him, potentially. However, while the effectiveness of direct magic is generally determined by disparity in strength, it does not mean indirect magic or summoning necessarily needs to be, like the creation of magical creatures like Boo. If Bibidi was as weak as Babidi, then the creation of Boo was something that was truly impressive, as is the ability to seal him in the ball again. And yes, when I say his creation of Boo, I'm referring to when the manga says he created Boo, not the later Toriyama interview that says he did not. And I know I've been comparing magic to ki and psychic power a lot, but that's mostly because sometimes it's extremely hard to really differentiate them. Like Master Mutaito's Mafabu or Evil Containment Wave. That is a technique, but one could argue it has some mystical aspects. Plus, much of Ki philosophy can be said to be mystical. While some things in traditional Eastern medicine and martial arts are very accurate to our understanding of science, some of it is not, and is referred to as mystical or otherworldly, and Toriyama knew this, and did not bother differentiating it from magic very much. However, there is a difference between Ki and magic, as well as psychic abilities, in Dragon Ball. I'm just saying some techniques or maneuvers can blur the lines. It's really hard to say if Toriyama would consider Oolong and Puar's transformation abilities magical or not, like I was talking about earlier. From what I can glean, it doesn't seem he does. The first real instances of magic in Dragon Ball are in the form of magic items. The Dragon Balls themselves, of course, like I mentioned, but also when Goku first meets Roshi, he is promised to be granted immortality by the immortal Phoenix, which is certainly magical, but apparently the Phoenix died, ironically, and so Master Roshi grants Goku the magic flying Nimbus Cloud, or Kinto-un. In the dub, Roshi offers Goku a flying carpet instead, but it's at the cleaners. But then he offers the flying Nimbus. The Power Pole also counts as well. It seems both conjuration and enchantment, to use D&D or Elder Scrolls terms, appear to be fairly powerful in the Dragon Ball universe, and is likely the most popular forms of magic to knowledgeable sorcerers, as they likely understand what I laid out on how strength could trump magic if there is enough of it. And so indirect magic seems to be the best kind. The summoning of Buu, the enchantment on the Power Pole, and even Korin's Sacred Water, plus the teleport technique, or the Kai Kai, which is essentially Goku's instant transmission without the need for honing in on an energy signature. Fortune teller Baba and Kami can use it, as can Kibito. We also see Mr. Popo using it on his magic carpet when he transported Bulma to Kami's old spaceship, too. In fact, it seems to be utilized mostly with people who have connections to the afterlife, or some kind of divine power. And one also cannot forget the Dragon Balls themselves. I won't dive too deep into them because they definitely deserve a video all their own. I might do that for like my 5,000th subscriber or something. But the creation of them is a good way to get around certain limitations, and grants the creator the ability to wish for almost anything. Though, as I stated earlier, power can still come into play depending on the wish, as Krillin finds out when Shenron cannot alter Android 18 back into a full human, since her power far exceeds Dende's. It is noteworthy, however, how the Dragon Balls are often used for conjuration, just like how typical Namekian Dragon Clan members use it. Oolong uses the first wish in the series to wish for a pair of panties, and we all know about Piccolo and Kami's Clothes Beam, which is a magical ability. Piccolo can also apparently create weapons like a sword out of nothing as well, like when he summoned a sword for Kid Gohan to use. It also seems that demons and Kais have such abilities, as I mentioned earlier with divine magic, like Supreme Kai summoning the block of Kachin, and Dabura summoning his sword to fight Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, or Super Saiyan Gohan if that is what you believe. There seems to be some connection between the race or species of the practitioner and their understanding or proclivity with magic as well. Namekians, particularly Dragon Clan members, as well as the alien race that Bibidi and Bobbidi are a part of, seem to have a natural understanding of magic. Though I would argue that both Bibidi and Bobbidi, as well as certain Dragon Clan members like Kami and Guru, have a greater understanding or have practiced more than most. However, humans can learn magic as well, and sometimes your speciality or strength in magic can gain the attention of powerful beings. Fortune teller Baba, for instance, is able to pass to the afterlife and back, and apparently has some sway with the Keepers of the Dead, at least if Bandages the Mummy and Grandpa Gohan's brief return is anything to go by. But of course, we can't forget that there is some offensive and defensive magic that acts much like how Ki could, or would. Babbidi's defensive barrier is quite powerful, and saves his life multiple times, at least in the anime. I know it saves his life when Vegeta self-destructs. And Bobbidi is also able to pop sufficiently weak beings' heads, like Swopovich and one of the caretakers of the World Martial Arts Tournament. I would also like to make the argument that the ability to heal, like Dende or Buu, is also a type of magic rather than a ki-based technique. And, as I've said a few times before now, deities seem to have certain magical abilities granted by their station. Kami has the ability to restore the moon after its destruction, which is obviously something a normal Namekian cannot do, and if we look into the movies, Dead Zone played into a small bit of lore and expanded it, with Kami banishing Garlic Sr. and his legions of evil creatures away for all eternity for daring to try and usurp Kami's rightful rulership of the Earth. And while I won't delve too far into the Kai magics or abilities since I already did in the Kai video, I do need to point out it does seem that certain stations grant one magic abilities, which I suppose we could call divine magic, like how we've used conjuration and enchantment. So we also have divine magic in the mix. And of course, with the recent episodes of Daima, there is evidently what they call light magic and dark magic, though we do not exactly know the main differences between them at the moment, other than what we could probably obviously construe. Okay, I believe that's the best I can do with magic when it comes to Dragon Ball. Toriyama made an extremely fantastical world, pulling ideas from a lot of mythology, yet at the same time, he was never one to sit down and hash out any real magic system like we might expect from our favorite tabletop games, or authors like Brandon Sanderson. I would argue Toriyama was a bit more like Tolkien, where magic is ever present but very vague, though I do need to admit that Toriyama's magic system is far less thought over than Tolkien's, and it reaches Disney levels of crazy, like with the Dragon Balls. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion on magic. I wish I could structure things better, but Toriyama definitely wanted to stay closer to the more mythical side of things. Please like, share, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. You know I love seeing and responding to your comments, and if you feel like it's worth it, my Patreon is in the description. Thanks, everybody.